Welcome to Legally Ponzaneli, a podcast dedicated to the real stories behind the legal profession. I'm your host, Stephanie Ponzaneli, a law graduate from the University of Arkansas School of Law. Each week, we will hear from different law graduates who share candid conversations, practical advice, and real experiences that show you just how different everyone's journey into the legal profession can be. This episode is sponsored by Belmonte, a skincare and lifestyle brand built around the reminder to stay still, grounded, and present. If you're not already following us on social media, you can find us on TikTok at legally.ponzanelli. You can find us on Instagram at Legally Ponzanelli Podcast. And if you have comments, questions, or suggestions for future guests, you can email me at legallyponzanelli@gmail.com. For sponsorship inquiries or ways to support the show, please feel free to reach out to the same email. Now, I'd love to welcome Ariana.
Hi, my name is Ariana. If you follow me on TikTok, you know me as Mentor Ariana. I was born and raised in Iowa, and I now live in Chicago with my fiance and my almost year-old golden retriever. He turns a year on St. Patrick's Day, which is literally crazy. But yeah, so that's just a little bit about me.
Are you going to have a puppy party?
I hope so. Yeah. I mean, obviously St. Patrick's Day in Chicago is such a big deal with the parade and everything, but everyone's
Yeah.
celebrating this weekend. So yeah, I mean, we'll definitely hang out with friends and stuff like that, but he's the best. Just a little bit of a nut, but what
Yeah.
else can you expect from a puppy?
Yeah. No, I love it when people do the puppy birthday cakes and stuff. I think that's so cute.
He loves lettuce. The dog is obsessed with a head of
What?
romaine lettuce. And no, it's the craziest thing. So I think the plan is to literally give him a head of romaine lettuce that he can just tear up and eat however much of it he can. But he also loves eggs and sourdough. So he might get his own little egg because usually he has to share with mom. So
That is so sweet. He's going to be like, wow, this is the best meal I've ever had. Birthdays are the
no,
best.
100%. He's like, best day of my life.
That's so great. So, where did you go to undergrad and what was your degree?
Yeah, so I actually have a little bit of a long journey with undergrad, right? So, grew up in Iowa, ultimately decided that I grew up dancing and I wasn't ready to leave that chapter behind. So, I actually went to Texas A&M for a semester and was studying their dance science program with the hopes of eventually going to PT school. And I was in Texas. I hated the heat. I was not a fan of the Texas A&M culture and ultimately decided to transfer to the University of Iowa. So went to the University of Iowa. I transferred after one semester, which was great to just be kind of closer to family back home. And when I transferred to Iowa, I was focused on a kinesiology major, still planning on going to physical therapy school. Ultimately switched, became pre-med. Was really focused on that for a very long time.
Mhm.
Kind of right around the pandemic, actually, I was like, I actually think I want to go to law school. And it kind of was a last minute pivot. And I remember when I was writing my personal statement and figuring all of this out, I felt so lost because I hadn't, been pre-law. I hadn't been making friends that were pre-law. All of my friends were science majors. All of them were going to grad school as well, but in a very different field.
Mhm.
And so at the very end, because I had always been getting a political science minor, I ended up switching and getting political science major with an international relations degree. And very quickly was like, okay, I'm gonna go straight through to law school, which in hindsight was a little bit delusional, but I think a lot of my journey has been filled with delusion, so it's fine. But yeah, so very much so was pre-med, very on that track, very much so switched to pre-law, very pretty last minute. And honestly, the biggest reason I think I was able to do it so quickly and still graduate in 4 years was because of the fact that the University of Iowa offered so many online courses prior to the
Mhm.
pandemic. And so it was very
Good.
easy to be able to get the credits I needed for a political science degree after COVID had started because the University of Iowa's political science program was already very much so used to administering courses online. So that definitely helped the transition.
Oh, that's great. So I forget that before the pandemic, a lot of schools weren't super into online courses. Oh, where did you go to law school?
So once again, University of Iowa, I applied to a lot of Big Ten schools thinking oh, I loved the University of Iowa. I love Big Ten. I love college football. So this would be maybe a good transition. But I'd always loved Chicago. Obviously growing up 4.5 hours out of the city was, we'd come here a lot for weekends and stuff like that. And my now fiance, then boyfriend at the time, was at the University of Michigan getting his MBA. And I was struggling, right? Because I was like, okay, I, have my whole future ahead of me. I know I'm going to law
Mhm.
school, but I don't want to make a decision off of a boy, right? Because everyone tells you not to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I was like, but I do wanna be in Chicago, but I ended up getting into the University of Wisconsin and Loyola, as well as a couple of other schools, but ultimately my decision came down to those 2. And it's funny because now I talked to my fiancé about it, and he's like, "This is crazy." But I ultimately decided to come to Loyola Chicago because it was closer to him, and that, in hindsight, was kind of a crazy decision. But the
Mhm.
University of Wisconsin and the University of Loyola gave me the same amount of scholarship money.
Yeah.
Obviously, my cost of living in Chicago was the same, but that's kind of how I ended up in Chicago. And in hindsight, I think if you're someone who's trying to decide where to go to law school, right? I don't
Mhm.
necessarily recommend my approach. My approach, I got very lucky and things worked out, right? But I think one thing that I wish I had considered more is the market that you're going to be entering, right? So, for
Mhm.
example, the University of Wisconsin in general, they don't make you take the bar exam. And so the law schools do not focus as heavily on bar exam related content. On top of that, if you're, a law student, you sign a 12-month lease, are you going to try to sublet your apartment and move to a bigger city to, get jobs, get opportunities, get exposure to things? Obviously, there's a lot of law schools in the Chicagoland area, but there's also a lot of lawyers and a lot of law firms that are willing to give out phenomenal opportunities. So I think that's something that I wish I had considered more. Obviously, it ended up working
Yeah.
out, but if you're trying to make a
Yeah.
decision on where to go to law school, I would consider that.
I don't think I knew that about Wisconsin, so you don't have to take the bar to practice law there?
If you go to law school in Wisconsin. I think they only have 3 law schools. Someone might fact check me on that. It's like UW, and then there's Marquette. There's definitely I think there's one more. But yeah, so if you go to law school in Wisconsin, you don't have to get a license to practice in Wisconsin, which is kind of crazy.
Can you take the bar in other states? Is it just
Yes,
kind of like
yeah.
at your
So,
own risk?
yeah, there's actually
Mm.
someone who I know from undergrad who we actually clerked together at a law firm my senior year, his junior year. He went to
Mhm.
law school in Wisconsin and now actually works in Chicago. So after graduating from Marquette, I think, he ended up having to sit for the Illinois bar exam. And I think a lot of students I've talked to who go to school in Wisconsin and choose to sit for the bar exam in another state, it's hard, right? Because your friends aren't taking the bar exam, your friends aren't in that same situation. It's a very different, I think, set of support that you get as
Mhm.
well, because the law schools obviously know that students take the bar exam, but it's not the majority of their students. So it's a really interesting dynamic if you choose to go to school in Wisconsin.
That is really interesting. See, I love doing these podcasts because, like, I never would have known about the Wisconsin. Maybe I should have gone there. No, I'm kidding.
No, I know, literally, where are you located at?
I'm in Arkansas, and I just sat for the
Okay, got
Arkansas
it.
bar. Yeah, February. So I literally, like, 2 weeks ago.
You literally
Yeah.
just sat for it. We love that. The bar exam, such a fun time.
I do wanna say, I was telling my friend that we were gonna do an interview, and she was like, "Oh my
Yeah.
god, I love her." She's, like, a super fan of you, and during the bar exam she actually took it in July, passed, she's wonderful.
Okay.
She was like she sent me a TikTok that you had made, and it was so wonderful where you
Yeah.
talked about, like, nobody actually cares about the bar, they only care because you care, and
Yeah.
that was such a great message to receive, and I love
Mhm.
your social media. So anyone that well, you mentioned you have social media, but I love that you're
Yeah.
so honest and you're very upfront about everything.
Appreciate that. I mean, I think, like, there is and for more context too, like, I'm a first generation attorney. I obviously am aware of the fact that, grew up very much so middle class. Like, I am a white woman. I know there's a lot of privilege with that. But I think being a first generation attorney, being a woman, navigating this industry, it's a lot. It's hard.
Yeah,
It sucks, honestly. And I think I
yeah,
didn't have any friends, I didn't have any family, like, I didn't know of anyone who was an attorney. And so when it came to figuring out, writing a personal statement or applying to law school or even getting to law school, I'm like, what the hell is a brief, right? Like, I
yeah,
had no idea. And I think I didn't realize how many people who go to law school, their family, like their parents, their grandparents, their aunts, their uncles, their cousins, their siblings, they're lawyers. And so I went in and I was like, I have no idea what's going on. And I
yeah,
have a really close group of friends that I made in law school, but
mhm,
all of them have a parent that's an attorney. Every single one of them. And, like, I think that is a testament to how hard it can be to navigate it without
yeah,
those resources and without that exposure, and that's kind of ultimately what led to me posting on social media was I was like, "This shouldn't be something that's gatekept. This shouldn't be information that's hard to
yes,
find." And I think especially with the technology and AI and everything, it's so easy to be like, "How to apply to law school," right? And it's
mhm,
like, well, you sit for the LSAT and then you write a personal statement and then you get letters of recommendation. But there's so much more that goes into this profession, that goes into applying to law school, going to law school, graduating law school, sitting for the bar exam, that I think people just don't talk about. And I really do believe that that's a huge reason why we have such a mental health crisis in this field.
Yeah. No, for sure. I am also a first gen, and that was,
Mhm.
like, the main reason why I'm doing this podcast, right? Like, there is so much unknown, and you walk in there. I'm with you. I didn't know what a brief was. I didn't know how
Right.
to write, like, I literally got my bachelor's, my master's. I'm like, "I can write. I can do this." It's a different beast. It's a different world
Mhm.
that you have to, like, navigate. Can you tell me a little bit about what your bar exam journey was like?
Yeah. Okay, let me go back in time. So I took the bar exam in May, or not May, July of 2024. I graduated in May of 2024. And I feel like it's important to give some more context outside of just the bar exam.
Mhm.
I actually was in a really bad place. The fall semester of my 3L going into the spring semester of my 3L. And I think that a lot of people experience this in some ways. My 3L year was not nearly as academically rigorous. I wasn't involved in as many activities. And I think I had more time to kind of like ponder this. And I also think because I had gone straight through from undergrad to law school, I'd obviously worked a lot of different jobs, but I wasn't a full-time employee at a desk. And I didn't love my summer associate program. I think there were certainly was great in general, right? But I had a really hard time with the transition of like, okay, now I'm sitting at a desk for literally 9 hours a day and someone else is telling me what to do. And that was really hard for me. And I think I started to realize I was like, this is the rest of my life.
Mhm.
My life is over. I'm going to become a lawyer and I'm going to do this job. And there is nothing else to me. My entire identity is a lawyer. And I was in a really bad headspace. And very soon thereafter, in April of 2024, we had to put our dog down, who
Aw.
he was 14, he lived a great life, right? But I think another thing
Yeah.
people don't talk about is how hard it is to lose a pet, right? It was horrible. It was
Yeah.
horrible. And not 2 weeks later, right, I graduated law school, and then it's like, "Okay, start studying for the bar exam." And you're like, "What? What do you mean?"
Mhm.
And so I very much so, I studied, I got my shit together, for lack of better words. Because of what a bad headspace I had been in, I finally reached out to I had been talking to a psychologist, but I ultimately reached out to a psychiatrist and was like, "I need medication. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna pass this exam if I don't have some sort of support." And so I ended up getting medicated, and I think in a lot of ways that is I tell my students this, and I talk about this on social media too, of I really think the only reason one of the main reasons I was able to pass the bar exam is because I had that assistance, right? And there's a
Mhm.
massive stigma still with mental health in the legal profession. There's a massive stigma with mental health and medication as well.
Mhm.
And do I think medication's for everyone? No, and I'm not a doctor, right? I'm not sitting here telling everyone that that's what they should do, but I think there is a level of it's okay to ask for help. And I was in a place where I needed help. It was really bad. It was scary. It was really, really tough. And obviously, throughout then being medicated, taking the bar exam, I was able to push through. I was able to get through the exam. And during bar prep, I was like, I kind of hate the way this is structured. Like, I don't understand. I kind of went rogue. Sat for the bar exam in July ultimately, and things worked out, right? I was really, really
Yeah.
honestly, I say lucky to pass because I think that is it does take a level of luck, I think, to pass the bar exam. So, that was kind of my bar exam journey. It was horrible. And it honestly took me almost a year. It took me a year. It took me a year after the bar exam to get my personality back, as I like to
Yeah.
say, to kind of get my sparkle back, to come back
Yeah.
to myself, feel confident again, and just honestly feel like myself. And so that's kind of what happened with the bar exam. And I try not to be exaggerative when I say this, but it was truly one of the worst times of my life. And
Yeah.
that feels really dramatic. Like, that feels so silly. It's like, Ariana, this is just an exam. But it's so much more than that. And I think the other
Yeah.
thing is, like, you don't have people talking about all the other shit that goes on in your real life.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you can't control if someone gets sick, or my sister ended up having emergency surgery in June, right? Like, right before the bar exam. That was really hard to go through. We unfortunately had a classmate of ours pass away 2 weeks before the bar exam. Horrible, horrible, right? And I wasn't
Yeah.
super close with her, but I saw her friends sitting at the bar exam, right? I was like, I that is it's that's one of the issues
Yeah.
with the bar exam, is the fact that there's only 2 times you can take it, right? And it doesn't
Yeah.
account for all these other things that go on in people's lives.
Yeah. No, I talked with someone on the podcast, and they were like, "You can't write in on your exam like, 'Hey, this just happened to me. I'm not able to give you my 100%,' because they don't care." Like you saw with the snowstorm. Some
Yeah,
people
no,
had
oh
to
my
make it
gosh.
work,
Don't get me
you know?
started. Don't get me started. Don't get me started on the snowstorm.
And so, you know what I mean? When you took the
Okay.
bar exam, could you tell me what that was like? Because I know I found out through my own podcast that everywhere does it differently. So I'd love to know what it was like taking the
Yes.
bar in Chicago. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, they do. I mean, one of the benefits, right, of living in Chicago is, like, I didn't have to travel for my exam. So I lived, like, 20 minutes from the testing center, so I just got in a little Uber and went to the test. Illinois is pretty lax with their rules, if I'm being honest, as it
Mhm.
pertains to what you can bring into the exam. So in the testing center that I was in, it was basically like a massive basketball arena, and we
Mhm.
were able to bring in anything we wanted to the exam. Like, I had so many snacks, I had so much food, I had so much caffeine, I had every form of medication I could ever need. I'm talking like Advil, Benadryl. Like, I was ready for basically anything that could have happened.
Yeah, try
Over
me,
prepared.
cough on me. Yeah.
No, I'm like, I brought 4 different laptop chargers. I was like, I am prepared, right? But for a lot of states, that's not the case, right? And so, like, that
Yeah.
kinda sucks though, or, like, they're not allowed to, like, they have to put their food in, like, a certain place. Like, there's a lot of restrictions in different states. So, Illinois is pretty lax. The biggest thing is, like, you have to bring, like, a plastic bag to your seat. It can only have, like, yellow highlighters, certain kinds of pens and pencils. I think you're allowed to have, like, 1 eraser. There's, like, dumb rules like that. Your water bottle has to be clear, which is just also, like, what's going on? And I've talked about this too, about the accommodation situation in different states is, like, a nightmare, but I had asthma,
Mhm.
and I was like, can I bring my inhaler down to my desk?" And they were like, "You have to get a note." So I had to go through this whole process in Illinois to be able to bring my inhaler to my desk. I had to have, like, a note from a doctor. I had to have proof that, like, it was an inhaler for my asthma. It was, like, the craziest thing. I was like, "It's not like this is, like, something odd." I think, like, an EpiPen, like, an insulin
Even
pump,
then, like, don't you want them to be safe?
asthma. No, that's like those
Yeah.
things should just be allowed. Like, you shouldn't need a
Yeah.
doctor's note for an EpiPen or, like, an
Yeah.
asthmatic inhaler or an insulin pump, but, like, they require it. So,
When did you
um,
find out? Was this in the beginning or,
thankfully
like, test day?
yeah, it was early on. It was early on.
Oh, good.
I saw that it said medical devices, but, like, no one at my school told me this, right? Like, I had to
Yeah.
figure all this shit out on my own, and it's, like, very much so reading the fine print, and
Yeah.
that's hard when you're in law school and you're like, "Oh, this is." I don't like, "Oh, I don't need accommodations." It's like, I have an inhaler. Like, that's crazy that that is, like, an accommodation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. I couldn't imagine bringing in a
Yeah.
doctor's note, being like, "Please, this is really
No,
mine.
I
I
know. I
just
was
wanna
like, "Well."
breathe."
Well, no, I know. I was like, and the odds are, like, I'm not gonna need it, but I was like, "God
Yeah.
forbid I do."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
Okay.
Nevada lets you bring in notes for the essays, I think. Yeah, I think it's Nevada, and I'm pretty sure it's the essays that you're allowed. Yeah, no, literally. But no, the Nevada exam is really hard. So I'm like, they deserve their little sheets of paper. No, you can, but, like, I was able to look at stuff during lunch, for example.
Oh, how many people are taking it?
Ooh, a lot. The
Okay.
other thing too to give context on is, like, my law school class had an extra 100 people,
Oh,
more
wow.
than the class above or behind me because I was a COVID class, right? So I applied to law
Oh.
school in the fall of 2020. And so a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people, if you take a gap year or 2 and you're like, "Oh, well, I guess this is time to go back," right? So I mean, the law schools across the country over accepted in my class. And
Mhm.
so I think we had, like, the most people sitting for the bar exam in the state of Illinois, like, ever during that cycle.
Mhm.
There's a lot of people. They basically have, like, skinny tables, rows of tables, so many rows
Mhm.
of tables. Honestly, one of the things that I thought was really comforting in, like, a weird way is the fact that so many people I knew. Like, I knew so many people at the
Mhm.
exam because
Yeah.
I went to law school with them, or I'd worked with them, or I knew them, like, in the Chicagoland area, and I think, like, in a weird
Yeah.
way, that was really comforting.
Yeah.
February is different, though. Like, February is different. So in Illinois, in Chicago, we have 2 testing centers in the summer. So in July, there's 2 different testing centers, and they're, like, a half a mile apart.
Oh, wow.
I
Okay.
mean, like, thousands of examinees, like, it's a lot of people. And then in February, though, it's usually only 1 testing center, and so that does make a difference.
Oh.
Different states are different. I think the heavy hitters are obviously California,
Mhm.
Chicago, Illinois, New York,
Mhm.
Florida,
Mhm. That makes
Texas
sense.
are normally the states with the like, you're most likely to have, like, a lot of people in your testing center. And if you're taking
Okay.
it in July, you'll have more people than you will in February.
Do you know whether the February or the July bar exam's harder? I feel like a lot of people think that the February is, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Um So I think that this is something I have such a hard time talking about because it really does, like, it's hard to talk about. I try really hard to be sensitive in the way that I communicate it, but there is a level of fact to this, right? So In July, you have a lot of first time takers, right? Statistically speaking, most people pass the bar exam on the first time. And so
Mhm.
when you think about the way that they are scaling the score, right? Sometimes I use the term curve. People get upset. They're scaling it, but we understand the difference.
Yeah.
I'm not a math person, so like a scale and a curve are the same in my mind, but I know they're different. Anyway, so the scale is different in July, right? It's going to be different, right? Whereas when you come to
Yeah.
February, if you think about it from a very logical perspective, if you have a student who, let's say without the scale, 150 points, the bar examiners cannot let that person pass with a 260 or above, right? If you think about it from
Mhm.
a very logical perspective, someone gets a
Yeah.
150, right? And so if you're having more people retake the exam, ultimately
Mhm.
what that means is that more people did not pass the first time. And statistically, for each subsequent time you take the exam, you are less likely to pass.
Mhm.
And from those statistics, right, it's like, okay, well, obviously, we're not going to have the same number of people pass in February as we do in July because we have more retakers.
Mhm.
And there's a certain threshold that I think the bar examiners expect students to hit in order to then be able to scale up to passing, right? And so if you're
Mhm.
getting 10% of the questions correct, they can't. They can't let that person pass, right? Do I
Okay, yeah.
agree with that? No. Do I think that that's the appropriate way for them to handle it? No, I don't, right? But that is the reality of the way the exam is currently administered and scaled, right? And so I think
Yeah.
the February bar exam is not harder. It's that you have a different testing pool. And that's why the passage rates are in the 40s for a lot of states in compared to, the 80s, 70s, or 80s in a July exam.
Thank you for saying that because I think that some people fear taking it in February.
I think it's really important that students know that, but it is really hard it's hard to talk about, right? Because I think I am such a believer that anyone can pass the bar exam.
Mhm.
I am such a firm believer in that. And I think that a lot of the bar exam is some of it's luck for sure, right? Because if you get an
Mhm.
essay topic that you feel confident about, right, you're in a much better position than a classmate or a peer of yours who didn't take that subject, for example, in law school. But I also think a lot of it is just handling a lot of it is the mental of it all, right? I
Yeah.
joke, but I mean this in somewhat of a serious way of like, this is literally psychological warfare, like the way this whole thing is handled.
Yeah.
And you get students who come out of 3 years of law school, which is extremely, frustrating, emotionally draining, exhausting. And then
Mhm.
you expect them to sit for this exam that's extremely emotionally draining, exhausting. And we don't
Yeah.
have the proper support systems. We don't have the proper support
Mm.
systems. And so many law students have substance abuse issues.
Yeah.
So many law students do. So many lawyers do,
Yeah.
right? And so, you bring substance abuse into the mixture, you bring mental illness into the picture as someone who I joke about this all the time, but it's true, like who is mentally ill. Like I get it, right? I understand.
Yeah.
For someone
Yeah.
who does have a substance issue, right? Like I get it. I get it. So I think it's hard though. It's hard.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's hard
No,
to
I
talk about the
agree.
fact that like retakers have a lower chance of passing. It unfortunately is the reality of the way this exam is structured and the way that we grade it as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for touching on that. I really appreciate it. I do
Of
wanna
course.
get into this part. I'm really excited to hear. How did you start doing the TikToks? How did you get into that?
Yeah. Yeah, so this is, like, it's such a funny story. It's such a funny story because my littles, I'm sure some of them are gonna listen to this. I call them my littles, and I don't mean it in a demeaning way, and everyone's like, "A little? What the hell is a little? Like a sorority?" And I'm like, "Kind of, yeah." So, at Loyola, and most law schools do this, but they call it different things, right? Different organizations will assign first-year law students "bigs," quote, unquote,
Aw.
"bigs," right? So, like, I was in the
Yeah.
Women's Law Society and the Health Law Society, and
Yeah.
they would assign us students. And so basically what I would do, this is a very long-winded story, but I feel like it's important to give context of how I got here.
Yeah.
Was like a lot of times people will say like, "Oh, I only want one little," because it's just a lot of work to like talk to people and get coffee chats and like all this stuff. And I was like, "Give me as many as I need. Give me as many as you want." And I was on the board for one of these organizations, and I just like assigned myself like 10 people, and I literally had 7 littles who I
Aw.
worked with my entire 2L year, helped them get through first year. Then I was a 3L and they were 2Ls, help them with that, right? And I ended up getting more littles who were 1Ls. And so now all of my original littles are practicing attorneys. They've all passed the bar exam. They all took it in July of 2025. And my last group of
Aw.
littles will all take it in this July. And I love it. My friends would make fun of me. I would send them I would literally set up my phone and send like 20-minute videos talking through like my binders I made for finals and like how I made them. I I'm obsessed with all of my littles. They are seriously phenomenal human beings. They are amazing women. They are amazing attorneys. And
Yeah.
I was like, "I love this. I love this. This is
Yeah.
so," and I missed it. I missed it. I had been practicing for almost a year at that point, and I was like, "I miss doing this." And one of my littles was like, "You should seriously post this on TikTok." Like, I literally just send my friends everything you're telling us because they would send me voice memos and be like, "Ariana, like, we don't understand how to do this for the bar exam." And I was like, "Okay, well, here's how I handled it." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay." So I think it was like June 26th of last year. I posted a TikTok video about the bar exam and it got like some traction. I mean, it wasn't like a viral whatever, but I
Yeah.
was like, wait, maybe this is needed. Like maybe this space isn't tapped into and maybe this is something that like would be really fulfilling for me. And so I started posting in June
Mhm.
and now we're here. So that's kind of the way that it started was just like this passion that I had so deeply working with one-on-one students and from my
Mhm.
law school, right? And then ultimately like spiraling into now working with students across the country.
That is incredible. So how did you start working with students one-on-one?
Yeah, so this is like a whole other issue. I started posting on social media about the bar exam and my thoughts and things like that. And I actually had a lot of law students reach out and say, "Hey, Ariana, I'm about to start law school and I'm really overwhelmed with making a study schedule." I said, "Okay, great." So I would get on these calls, these like 30-minute calls with law students, and I would help them build out like a schedule, right? Of time
Mhm.
blocking, prioritizing readings with classes and things like that. And I did that all for free all of this fall. And I started having law students reach out, or I started having bar examinees reach out to me because bar exam results came out right in September and October from July. And they were like, "Hey, you didn't start posting till June. I didn't start following your method until June. And I wish I had started it earlier and I didn't get the score I needed. Are you working with bar examinees?" And I kind of was like, "Yeah, sure. Why not?" And it was funny because I was like people were like, "Well, what are you gonna charge?" And I was like, "I wasn't planning on charging. I wasn't planning
That's
on
so
charging anything."
nice of you.
And so I didn't though. I didn't. So I worked with over
Yeah.
200 students for the February bar exam, and I didn't charge anyone anything. And I had said like, "Oh, I started posting on social media and telling all of my students, I was like, I'm gonna do this for free for February 2026. And if it turns into something, I'll start charging for July." And it did. It turned into something, right? I worked with over 200 students. And so I was kind of like, oh man, I'm like in over my head, right? Like I really
Yeah.
bamboozled myself into this. But I am so glad I did it that way. I'm so glad I got to work with all of these students. And now that they've all taken the bar exam and they're like back living their lives, I miss them so much. I just posted about this yesterday
Aw.
on Instagram. I was like, I miss them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that whole thing started, but then I started having more law students reach out and they were asking like, "Can you review my outlines? Can you go through hypotheticals with me?" And then I started having pre-law students reach out and be like, "Will you read my personal statement? Will you edit my resume?" And so I kind of just function as a one-stop shop now. So I have
Yeah.
packages for pre-law students, I have packages for current law students, and I have packages for bar examinees. And I currently have like 10 to 15 students signed up for July so far. And I have a bunch of calls with students who are sitting for the July 2026 bar exam set up over the next month. And so I'm
Mhm.
working on getting more students for that.
Perfect. So if you're listening to this, she is still taking students. Do you have, like, a cap?
I am. I do have a cap. I have an internal cap.
Okay.
I should have done a cap last time, but I didn't. The biggest thing that is hard, right, is I have a lot of different types of packages, right? So I have
Yeah.
packages that, are 2 calls with students. Obviously, that student's gonna take a lot less of my time than a student where I have 10 calls with them and I'm reviewing essays and their writing for the bar exam.
Mhm.
So I have different numbers depending on how many students I get within each bracket, right? Because if I have
Yeah.
15 students in my top bracket, that's probably where I'm tapping out, right? 'Cause that's a lot of time and
Yeah.
effort and energy. Whereas if I have, I could have probably 40 students at my bottom package and things would be totally fine. So I am absolutely still taking students. I will take on as many as I can because I
Yeah.
think that this is a service that's needed, but I'm also open to doing group packages and things like that too. So I'm very much so like, if anyone has any requests, let me know and I will try to figure out a way to make it happen because I think it's definitely something that's not being tapped into. I think there's not enough resources
Mhm.
for it. And so anything I can do to help students, I'm trying to do to the best of my ability.
Yeah. No. I love that because a lot of the people that I talk to, I don't know if you knew a little bit about what I was doing on TikTok when I started, and it was all like an accident as well. I was just like, "Oh, okay." I was studying for the bar, and I was fighting for my life on the MBEs because I'm like, "This is so boring. Like, I don't wanna do this, but I need to retain. I have ADHD. Like, I need to find a way to make this engaging for myself." I'm
Yep.
sorry, look at this soda. So what I started doing is I started doing lives, and I would just sit there and do my MBE questions. And I would read the
Mhm.
fact pattern, and then I would go through and say why I picked what I picked. And so I started off with like maybe like 5 people that joined, which I was still like, wow, I can't believe anyone joined this, you know? Like
Yeah,
this
100%.
is like one boring, two like, it ended up growing so much and we built a community. And something that I think the bar exam does is make you feel isolated, alone, stress. And I feel like as a February bar taker, like all my friends took it in July. My boyfriend took it in July. They all passed. I'm proud of them. They're doing amazing. But I didn't have that community, and they would check on me, like, this is not on them at all, like, they would help me in any way they could, calls, everything, but it's still different
Mhm.
than with someone literally going through that journey with you. So, it ended up growing
Yeah,
so much, and, um it got to the point where everyone would guess, like, what they thought the answer was, and you'd learn tricks from other people, and it was wonderful, it was beautiful, and I didn't know, which makes sense, but, like, there is such a big need to, like, be able to connect with someone and have someone just sometimes that's all you need is someone walk you through it, and it'll click and it'll
yeah,
work, right? Because I had the big bar prep company, and there were things that I really, really enjoyed about Themis, there was. But there were areas that I was like, "This isn't helpful for me." And I know myself and I
right.
need to trust but it's hard because you are paying a lot of money for this, and it works for a lot of people. So, I think something that I really want the listeners to know is that if you get told often, like, it'll click," and it's still not, pivot. Find a
Yep,
mentor, find someone to go to, find something that works for you because this exam is so big, is so time consuming, and is expensive, right? You don't want to do this again. And if you know that there's someone that can help you, definitely do that. And one of the people that I,
right.
I interviewed with, her episode's coming out soon, but she actually hired a tutor because she was like, she had Themis and it just didn't click. It didn't work. And she was like, there was things that I liked, but she ended up doing 80% of the program. Like 90% chance of passing if you hit 75. And so it's not like for
Right,
lack of doing the work. Sometimes it just doesn't work,
right.
and that's okay. So I love that you offer that not only like a human to talk to, because I feel like some people don't talk to a human for a
Yeah,
while. Um,
yep.
but breaking things down, what does it look like when people book an appointment with you normally, or like specifically the bar takers?
Yeah, yeah. So, we do a lot, right? Usually what my first step is have you taken this exam? If you have taken the exam, send me your score report. Score reports don't give you a ton of insight, but it gives me some, right? It gives me some idea of where did they struggle? Where did they not struggle? How can I help? What are the things that we're working on? Was it multiple choice? Was it essays? And obviously all of this is going to change with the next gen bar exam in a lot of ways, unfortunately, but this is how it worked for February. So once I had that, what I do from there, right, is I say, okay, what bar prep program do you have? What resources do you have? What things have you accumulated? And if you're a retaker, you probably have a bunch of different stuff, right? So I would get
Mhm.
someone who'd come in and they'd say, okay, well, I used Barbary and I got through the amount I needed to be able to have an automatic retake. So I get Barbary again. Okay, great.
Mhm.
I also have the critical pass flashcards. Okay, great. I also bought Goat Bar Prep. Okay, great. I also have the magic sheets. It's like, okay. Okay. We have too many things now. Or for some
Mhm.
students, right, they're like, I had Adaptabar. And so I loved using
Mhm.
Adaptabar for multiple choice, but I didn't like Barbary's videos. And so I ended up watching the Grossman videos. But then I watched the Barbary videos for the MEE topics. And so I'm like, okay, so we need to sit down and come up with a very clear cut plan, right? And so normally what I tell
Mhm.
students to do is I say, I want you to go subject by subject. Because as you know, these bar prep companies, they jump around a lot, right?
Yeah.
You watch the videos for Civ Pro, and then you watch the videos for property, and then you do the Civ Pro multiple choice. But like, if you're just passively watching videos, you're not learning anything.
Yeah.
So I'll sit down with them and I'll be like, okay, so what worked and what didn't? What did you like? What did you not like? And then we'll basically build out a program. I give students a spreadsheet. There's a tab for every single week of bar prep, however long their bar prep is going to go. And it gives
Mhm.
them detailed to do lists of everything I want them to do that week. Right. And I'll assign dates in the spreadsheet of like, on this date, I want you doing this. On this date, I want you doing this. On this date, I want you doing this. And that's what we do, right? And then we do check-ins, we check in, we see how things are going. I also will grade MPTs, I will grade essays. I also have them send me their score reports that they get from Adaptabar or UWorld, and I'll analyze it and kind of figure out, okay, we're having massive gaps on negligence. Like we are not getting negligence questions correct. Okay, how can we problem solve that? How can we pivot it? What other resources can you turn to? And I think like you said too, students look at that ticker on Themis and Barbary and they're like, "Oh, I have to hit 80%." It's like, okay, well, if
Yeah.
you're doing a shitty job hitting 80%, then like that's not gonna matter.
Yeah.
And so I'm working on developing a spreadsheet that basically you get to keep track of all the stuff you're doing because most students don't just follow their bar prep program, they do a bunch of other
Yeah.
shit. But that doesn't
Yeah.
count towards their time or their effort or their energy. And so they're like gaslit by Themis and Barbary saying like, "Oh, well, I've only done 10 hours of work." It's like, no, you've done 300. You just did it on
Yeah.
different programs. So I'm building on a spreadsheet where students will be able to like purchase it for like $5 and
Yeah.
be able to input all of the information and all of the time and all of the energy and stuff that they're doing to
Mhm.
be able to track their own time. So that way they're not having to be like literally gaslighting themselves of like, I haven't done anything because Themis is saying I haven't done anything.
Yeah. I love that you say that because I actually did a notebook, but every single day I wrote down everything I did because I was like, I need a way to remind myself, like, I am still doing the work. Because it's easy to think, like,
Right.
it's easy for it to say 0, but I'm like, "No, but I went and did this, like, I promise," you know? So I
Yeah.
love
Or
that
it's like
you're
review your outline and you're like, what the hell does that mean? Review my outline for 2 hours? It's a 90-page document. Okay.
Yeah. No, yeah. Or things that would just take forever. So, yeah, I love that.
Right.
That's gonna be super helpful.
I hope so.
Oh, yeah. Like this I can't believe you helped 200 students for free. That is
It was a lot.
that's a did you
A
get a
lot.
gift at least? Was someone like, "Here is my, like, firstborn once
No,
I
I mean, I was
pass?"
very much so like I mean, I haven't so, like, that's the other thing is people are like, "Well, what percentage of your students pass the bar exam?" I'm like, "I don't know." Like,
Yeah.
I don't know because none of them have gotten their results yet. But no, I mean, like, I am so passionate about this, I would do it for free. Like, I would
Yeah.
continue to do it for free, right? I mean, like, I think the goal eventually is to be able to just do this full time, right? Is to do social
Yeah.
media, work with students, do coaching, all the things, right? Like, I would love to be able to do this full time. So I think,
Yeah.
and it's something where like I was talking to my fiance about this about how like some people work to live, some people live to work. I also think there's this thing where, like, sometimes when you have, like, this entrepreneurial bug, you, like, can't get rid of it. Like, you
Yeah.
just no matter what you do, you just don't feel satisfied unless you're doing something for yourself. And I think,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I have that.
Mhm.
I get it from my father and my sister. Yeah, yeah. My sister's an entrepreneur. Like, it's just my grandfather was an entrepreneur. Both of my grandfathers were entrepreneurs. So I think, like, that is, I think, part of it is I'm just, I think, obsessed with this and doing it and
Mhm.
building something and helping people. But it was really helpful for me too, selfishly. Like I was able to learn a lot. I was able to figure out what works and what doesn't. I was able to figure out what the needs are to then be able to provide those services for other students at a much better caliber than what I was doing in art. I love it so much. And I'm like, I want people to sign up, not because like I want to make money from it. I'm like, I just want people to do
Yeah.
it. Like I want to help people.
What do you think most people struggle with when they come to you for guidance?
I think students struggle a lot with self-confidence, actually. The thing that I hear from people all the time, especially retakers, right, is I was studying, I was using Themis, I was using Barbary, and it wasn't working. But I didn't have the confidence to do what I thought would help.
Mhm.
And I get it, right? It's like you said, we pay a lot of money for these bar prep programs. They work for a lot of students. And so why wouldn't it work for me? And like maybe it's just, it hasn't clicked yet, right?
Mhm.
But a lot of times people will literally come to me and they're like, I didn't think this was working. I wanted to do this instead, yada, 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 yada. And I'm like, okay, then do that. Do that. And I'm not, a lot of tutors, right? I don't really call myself a tutor. I call myself a coach, but semantics. They're very one size fits all. And I'm very much so of the mindset of like a student who struggles with ADHD is not going to learn the same way that a student without ADHD does. A student with crippling anxiety is not going to learn the same way that a student without anxiety is. A student
Mhm.
that has a massive history working in family law, like they don't need to sit and spend the same amount of time learning family law. A student who was on mock trial does not need to spend as much time learning evidence as a student who does transactional work, right? And
Mhm.
so I really sit with my students and I try really hard to get to know them so I can
Mhm.
also be reassuring and be like, no, you should trust yourself. This instinct that you have that you don't need to go and do the same number of multiple choice on evidence as you do on property is right. Like trust that
Mhm.
and see what happens with that. So I think that's honestly the biggest thing students struggle with is having trusting themselves and not getting caught up in all of the rhetoric around
Mhm.
this exam. And it happens in law school too, right? Like you hear people, "Oh, I was up all night studying for this exam and yada, 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 yada." It's like, okay, but that didn't work for me. I didn't stay up all
Yeah.
night because I need sleep to be able to function and perform well on exams, right? And everyone's different, but you have to figure out what's going to work for you. And it's really hard to do that for the bar exam because of all of the weird external pressure. and all the stuff that you're told about the bar exam.
Yeah. Yeah. No, awesome. So what advice would you
Cool.
give to future law students?
Prioritize your mental health now and do some self reflection on your relationship with substances. I think that it's really easy, especially if you're coming straight from undergrad, to just be like, oh, yeah, I drink. I drink when I'm stressed. It's like that. I think it just leads to a lot of problems down the road. And I've seen that in my own life, and I've seen that in the lives of a lot of peers of mine. Law school is really stressful. There's parts of it that are really hard. It can be really isolating. And so I think pairing mental health and
Mhm.
becoming as mentally strong as you can be while also avoiding reliance on substances, I think can lead to a really beautiful result throughout law school and ultimately leads to students getting what they need to out of law school.
Great. What advice would you give to recent law graduates that are planning to take the bar exam?
Well, first, follow my page, Mentor Ariana. It's super fun over there. I'm on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. But what else would I say? I would say to really sit and consider how you learn, right? And really be intentional about thinking about that and rely on that when you're studying. So, for example, I hate flashcards. I hate flashcards. So, why
Mhm.
did I buy the Critical Pass flashcards? I've never used a flashcard in my life. Today is not the day to start, right? I'm an auditory processor. I am an auditory processor. So yeah, I should have got the John Grossman videos earlier, right? But you have to know yourself because we're all different. We're all very different.
Mhm.
And so I think before you start jumping into this whole process and buying a bunch of stuff, really be intentional and be like, do I learn from reading, listening, or watching?
Mhm.
Am I a millennial with a child? Then like Goat Bar Prep might not be for you. Am I Gen Z and like fully engaged in internet culture? Then maybe Goat is a good decision, right? Do I love flashcards? Then you should get Critical Pass, right? But if you've never used a flashcard before and you find them overwhelming, don't get the Critical Pass flashcards, right? I think
Yeah.
those are the things that it's less about the substance at this point. It's more about what am I going to use as a tool
Mhm.
and what will be helpful for me. And you have to know yourself to be able to do that. But I think being intentional and thinking about it really helps really helps set yourself up to be successful on the exam.
Do you work with any bar prep companies, or is there any that you like, "Oh, I do actually think this is a good one," or are you just kinda like, each has good pieces?
So no, honestly, no, I don't. And honestly, I love that. Like I'm releasing my own study
Mhm.
guides in May, God willing.
Yeah.
It's taking me so long, but I like not working with companies about because I
Yeah.
can say whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah.
No,
What advice would you give to bar exam retakers?
this one's hard because I feel like the bar exam retakers are like my children. You're not in this alone, right? And I have shared this story before and I have gotten permission from my friends to share this story. So I will share the story. But my two best friends from law school, like bridesmaids in my wedding, best friends, didn't pass the bar exam the first time. And they joke it was harder on me than it was on them to not have them pass. But it seriously was like, it rocked my world. It rocked our world. It was horrible. They had to like resit for it in February. I was like, I was just struggling. I was struggling, right? I was like, I'm starting this job. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. It's really demanding. I'm having a really hard time, right? And I think most new lawyers feel that way. I don't think this is unique to my job by any means. And at the
Mhm.
same time, my two best friends, like, they don't get to practice. Like, they don't even get to do this thing that we worked so hard for that I'm now complaining about. And so I felt
Mhm.
like I couldn't talk to them. And they were like, they felt like they couldn't talk to me. And it was really hard. It really sucked. Like, it really sucked. And now they both passed. Everything's fine. We're all lawyers. Everything's great. But I think after that, too, it really, really rocked my world. And I was like, okay, this is such an isolating process if you have to retake it.
Mhm.
Like, it's just such an isolating process because, like, everyone else moves on and you're still sitting here dealing with this shit. And so I guess this is not even advice, I guess. It's just like reminding you guys that you are not alone in this and you will get across this finish line and you will figure it out, right? I have worked with students who have taken this exam 9 times, right, and passed. They take it that ninth time and they pass, right? So, I think there's massive stigma around this exam. There's a massive stigma in the legal field about it, but, like, don't let that get to you. Everyone's situations is different. Everyone's situation is different. Everyone's context is different, and everyone has a different level of support, right? But at the end of the day, you are not alone in this process. And I think once you recognize that and you know that and you find people to be able to reach out to, it makes the process a lot more bearable. And I think ultimately it really helps students get through to the other side.
Great. I think people need to hear that, and it's not embarrassing. Like, it's a hard test,
Hmm.
and it's designed for
Yeah.
not everyone to pass.
And two is there's just a lot it doesn't take into account.
Yeah.
Right? I've talked to a
Yeah.
lot of women specifically who are like, I have PCOS, and the last time I took the bar exam, it was the first day of my cycle. Like, we're not
Yeah.
taking that into account when we're grading the bar exam, right? You have a situation in New York last summer where the student had a heart attack right in front
Yeah.
of one of my students that I, like, work with. Like, she's like,
Oh my
"Obviously, I didn't
god.
pass. The girl in front of me had a heart attack." No shit,
Yeah.
Sherlock. You get situations like New York this year where there was a blizzard. And so
Yeah.
then, like, half of the state knew the essay topics before the other half took the exam, right? There's just you never know. You never, 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 never know. And everyone
Mhm.
has different situations going on in their life. And
Mhm.
therefore, I think it's really unfair to say that the exam is the same for everyone. It's not. It's not an
Yeah.
equitable exam by any stretch of the imagination. And that's the thing that people in the legal field forget. And that I think is also part of the problem, right? Is like people find out, especially older lawyers, find out someone doesn't pass, and the rhetoric is heinous, right? But you're like, you have no room to talk. Like you have no room to talk. It's not. It's just inappropriate rhetoric, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to go ahead and thank you so much for hopping on here. And please tell everyone what your social media and where we can get more information from you when we need your help.
Yes. So my Instagram and TikTok is at mentor period Ariana. And you can DM me. You can text me. My phone number's in my bio. I have my link tree with like all of the scheduling stuff. So if you want to schedule an intro call, if you're a pre-law student, a current law student, a bar examinee, right? Like I have all of that available on all of my social media channels. So yeah, feel free to DM me, text me, email me if you have any questions. But thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. It was wonderful. And yeah, I can't wait to see this go live.
That's it for today's episode. Again, I'm Stephanie Ponzanelli, and this is Legally Ponzanelli. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. A special thank you to our sponsor, Belmonte, a brand rooted in the reminder to stay still, grounded, and present. I also want to give a big thank you to Mentor Ariana. I will make sure to provide her link tree so that you're able to find her on all her social media platforms and schedule with her. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to share it with your friends, a classmate, or a colleague, and post it on social media. And if you're not already following along, you can find me on TikTok at legally.ponzanelli and Instagram at Legally Ponzanelli Podcast. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for future guests, email me at legallyponzanelli@gmail.com. And if you're a law graduate who wants to share your story, I'd love to hear from you. For sponsorship inquiries or other ways to support the show, feel free to reach out to the same email. Bye!